Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are really getting into a comprehensive leadership toolkit. It's built around a guide called Roar and Wings, and it's full of discussion questions, some really intense reflections, and practical daily exercises. And that title, Roar and Wings, I mean, the imagery just tells you everything you need to know, right?
It really does.
The sources define the roar as courage. So that's your foundation, your backbone, the internal strength you need to actually do something.
Right.
And then you have the wings, which represent vision. That's the horizon, the direction you're heading, the ultimate goal.
And that imagery isn't just, poetic, it's structural. Our mission here for this deep dive is to move past the theory. The material is absolutely designed to force leaders, and that means you, to translate these big ideas into immediate intentional action.
So we're really exploring the prompts that force courage and vision to work together.
Exactly. Not just exist side by side, but work in tandem.
Yeah.
And all of it rooted in these core principles of integrity and purpose.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sources hit hard right at the start. They ask this core question that forces you to do an instant internal audit. What if your current leadership style, the way you operate every single day, is driven more by comfort than by a true calling?
Oof. And that distinction is it's crucial because comfort can so often disguise itself as competence or just, the status quo.
Right, it's just the familiar playbook.
It is. A calling, on the other hand, it demands risk. It demands trust. The material really pushes you to identify where you might be leaning on external things, your position, maybe your budget, or even just your personal charisma.
Instead of a real, unshakable conviction that comes from that vision.
That's it. If comfort's driving the bus, then the roar you're making it's synthetic. It's just bravado.
Which leads right to the next point the sources make about courage itself. They define real courage as obedience in action.
Precisely. And we have to be so careful to distinguish between what they call false courage and godly courage.
What's theirs there?
Well, false courage is that bravado we just mentioned. It's recklessness. It's acting big to hide fear or maybe taking a huge risk just to look decisive. It's all ego.
Okay.
The godly courage in this framework it's obedient trust. It's that quiet commitment to do the mission even when everything is hostile or uncertain. The sources ask you to look at your gut reaction to fear. What does it reveal about where your trust really lies?
I was really struck by how practical that is. So if I see a leader take some massive unnecessary gamble, the sources are saying that might not be courage. It might actually be insecurity.
It could be. It could be them leaning on their status to cover up a lack of real clarity. True courage is sticking to the mission when it's just plain easier to cut corners.
So it turns courage from an emotion into a strategy, an executable strategy.
Rooted in integrity.
Yeah.
If your action is obedient to your mission and your values, it's courageous, period, regardless of the outcome.
Okay, so let's pivot to the wings. Vision. If the roar is the force, vision is the direction. And the sources warn that your vision is always at risk of being clouded.
Right. And not by fog, but by personal ambition or external pressure.
So the question is, are you seeing the mission, or are you just seeing your name in lights?
Exactly. I mean, the material is highly skeptical of any vision that just mirrors a leader's own personal goals for, fame or wealth or power. A clear vision has to be bigger than the individual.
And it can't just be a reaction to what competitors are doing or what the market wants.
No, it has to come from clear internal foresight, not just reacting.
And what's so fascinating is how the sources then give you this really stringent evaluation metric for it.
Yeah, think of it this way. They ask you to imagine evaluating your whole team, your whole organization, your budget, hiring, marketing, everything based on one single question. How well does it reflect that God-given vision?
That would be a tough meeting.
It forces total operational honesty. If that was the only metric, what specific non-negotiable changes would you have to make tomorrow morning? That reveals the gap between what you say and what you actually do.
That's a phenomenal check on organizational integrity. Okay, let's get to the core problem the sources are trying to solve here, which is the interplay between the two. And this is where it gets really compelling, because they highlight two super common leadership pitfalls.
Right. The two ways this can go wrong.
The first one, and maybe the loudest one, is acting with courage, but without vision. You're bold, you're moving fast, you're roaring all the time, but you have no coherent destination.
And the result of that is usually just chaos and burnout. It's action for the sake of action. Imagine a race car going 200 miles an hour with no map.
It's going to crash. Or just run out of fuel in the desert.
That's courageous action without the focusing power of vision.
Okay, and the flip side is just as bad. The second pitfall is planning and dreaming endlessly. You have the perfect vision, the flawless strategy, but you never take those courageous, obedience-driven steps.
Total paralysis that leads to lost momentum, stalled projects, and a legacy of beautiful binders gathering dust on a shelf. You've got the wings, but no roar to actually get off the ground.
So these two forces have to fuse.
They have to. The roar has to be informed by the wings, and the wings have to be built on the strength of the roar.
So the challenge is alignment, creating structures or daily practices that make sure boldness and foresight always work together. Never on their own. You can't just be a dreamer or just a doer.
And for leaders in this framework, the ultimate filter they present is the model of Christ. The sources ask, where does your approach mirror that unique blend of courage and vision?
That can sound a bit abstract. How do the sources make that practical?
By focusing on one thing, surrendering authority. It completely flips the script.
How so?
Well, traditional power is about accumulation, control, influence over others. When the sources talk about surrendering authority to God, they translate that into leadership defined by service, by radical delegation, by trusting the process, not just micromanaging the outcome.
The influence comes from integrity, not position.
That's it. And if we connect this to daily decisions, the test becomes surprisingly simple. Does this action reflect obedience first, ambition second? That's the hinge point for every major choice. If ambition, the chase for personal gain, for status is in the driver's seat, the sources say your wings might be taking you somewhere that compromises your faithfulness, no matter how loud your roar is.
And this thinking applies way beyond the next meeting.
Right.
Right? The sources really push you to think about legacy, what will actually remain when you step aside.
That requires some brutal honesty, doesn't it?
It does. Are there places where short-term comfort, like avoiding a tough conversation or taking a quick win, has compromised the long-term mission? And then the follow-up is, okay, how can you course correct today to influence generations to come? It shifts leadership from being a title to being stewardship.
Stewardship is the perfect word. It forces you to look beyond your own lifetime. If you only focus on metrics and position, your influence it evaporates when you leave. But if you build structures of integrity and mentor faithful leaders, that impact lasts.
Okay, so we've set up the ideal, the foundation of integrity, courage, and vision. But now we have to make it operational. So that brings us to section 3, where the resources give us these hands-on tools.
Exactly. Theory without practice is just philosophy. And the first tool is called mapping your leadership backbone and horizon.
Tell us how that works.
It's all about forcing alignment. First, you identify one specific courageous action you took in the last week. A hard conversation, a principled stand, a necessary risk. That's your backbone.
Okay.
Then you pair that with one of your current long-term vision goals, your horizon. The whole point of the exercise is to see where those two might be out of sync. Did your courageous action actually undermine your long-term vision? Or did your vision require a courageous step you haven't taken yet?
That makes the whole idea of alignment really tangible. It stops you from just acting on courage that's misaligned, or having a vision you're too comfortable to actually pursue.
And to deal with that discomfort, the next technique is called fear mapping. This is a way to confront that internal resistance because fear is the #1 killer of courageous action.
Fear is what sends you running back to comfort instead of calling. So how do you map it?
It's simple, but it's challenging. It requires some real vulnerability. First, you list your top 3 fears that are influencing your decisions right now. And you have to be honest. Is it fear of failure, fear of disappointing someone important, fear of financial loss?
Got it.
Then, for each fear, you write down one specific actionable step you can take in obedience to the mission, despite the discomfort. You write, despite the fear of losing this client, I will decline the ethically questionable project. It shifts your focus from managing the feeling of fear to just enacting your faith in the mission.
I love that. It's like an immediate behavioral countermeasure to a mental block. And speaking of blocks, resistance is inevitable when you lead this way. So the materials advise you not to just get defensive. Instead, first, you interpret the opposition. Is it a personal attack? Is it a spiritual test? A simple misunderstanding? Or, and this is the hard one, is it a necessary critique that actually aligns with the vision but requires a courageous change in you?
That intentional pause prevents you from wasting energy fighting the wrong battles. Once you've interpreted it, you can develop a faithful response grounded in courage and vision instead of just reacting emotionally.
This all connects perfectly to just managing your daily workflow. The sources outline a system that's a bit like, say, GTD, but filtered through this mission-driven lens. They call it the actionable to-do list filter.
It starts with basic specificity. A stalled task is almost always stalled because it lacks a clear next physical action. So you have to change a vague thought like follow up on Project X to an executable task. Email Sarah to schedule a 30-minute meeting about Project X by 2 p.m. today.
That specificity is the first act of courage, right?
Right.
It makes it real.
It does. And then before you take on any new commitments, you have to apply the priority filter. You ask 2 questions. First, does this align with my core mission and God-given vision?
Okay, that makes sense.
And second, just as important, what is the cost of delay on my current mission-critical items if I take this new thing on? You're basically auditing your tasks against your conscience and your capacity.
There's also a tool for freeing up headspace, the mental bandwidth audit. We all have those nagging concerns, right? The mental loops that just consume energy.
It's like having 30 tabs open in your browser all the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
So you list your top 10 recurring concerns. Did I check that budget? I need to talk to John about his performance. I'm worried about Q4. Then you commit to offloading at least 3 of them immediately.
And offloading means what?
It means turning them into a concrete, actionable step on your to-do list or delegating it. Right then, it frees up the mental space you need for the high-level, vision-driven work that only you can do. It's a spiritual discipline of cognitive management.
The goal here is clearly integration, making all of this courage, vision, obedience part of your daily rhythm, not just for a retreat once a year.
Right.
And the sources recommend a simple tool for that, the 30-day courage and vision tracker.
Yeah.
Every day, you just record one courageous action you took, one vision-aligned step, and one lesson you learned. It forces daily accountability. It makes the journey visible.
This whole deep dive really shows that impactful, enduring leadership needs 2 things. First, that robust internal strength from your spiritual formation and integrity. And second, strong external systems to manage your actions. These tools make sure your leadership stays purpose-driven, moving way beyond just metrics or position.
It's about building a legacy of faithfulness.
And resilience, yes.
We started this conversation by challenging that assumption of comfort versus calling. We built a structure designed to replace comfort with courageous, vision-aligned action. So let's end with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. How will you measure success in your own leadership beyond the traditional metrics of profit or influence or position using courage, vision, and faithfulness as your ultimate generational guide?